you decide now to follow Jesus? Will you decide now to follow Jesus? Will you decide now to follow Jesus? No turning back, no turning back. Hello there, good evening. Welcome along. It's a privilege to be with you this evening, to spend some time in the house of the Lord and to look at his word and sing spiritual songs, which is a wonderful thing. Well, it's lovely to be with you. I bring greetings. Well, some of them are here, actually. I was going to say I bring greetings from the people of Quainton, but we've got Jeff here and Ken there and Annie here, but everybody else sends their best regards as well. We're very grateful for the kind of link that there is between Quainton and Chartridge, and it's a privilege to be here. And I was delighted to have the opportunity, the privilege, to come and share about the book of Ruth. We're starting a series, aren't we, in May, that Andy has organised. And each Sunday, I think this month, you'll be looking at a different chapter of the book of Ruth. And I have the privilege of kicking things off with Ruth Chapter One. And as you know, the book of Ruth is a lovely book. It's very often people's favourite book because of some of the wonderful things that are contained therein, the love and the loyalty and the faithfulness and all of the things that we read there. And so it's really a delight to be here. Let's turn to it, shall we, and read all of chapter 1. Now it came to pass in the days when the judges ruled that there was a famine in the land, and a certain man of Bethlehem, Judah, went to sojourn in the country of Moab, he and his wife and his 2 sons. And the name of the man was Elimelech, and the name of his wife Naomi, and the name of his 2 children Mahlon and Chilion, Ephrathites of Bethlehem, Judah. And they came into the country of Moab and continued there. And Elimelech, Naomi's husband, died, and she was left and her 2 sons. And they took them wives of the women of Moab. The name of the one was Orpah, and the name of the other Ruth. And they dwelled there about 10 years. And Mahlon and Chilion died also, both of them, and the woman was left of her 2 sons and her husband. Then she arose with her daughters-in-law that she might return from the country of Moab, for she had heard in the country of Moab how the Lord had visited his people in giving them bread. Wherefore she went forth out of the place where she was, and her 2 daughters with her. And they went on the way to return unto the land of Judah. And Naomi said unto her 2 daughters-in-law, Go, return each to her mother's house. The Lord deal kindly with you as ye have dealt with the dead and with me. The Lord grant you that ye may find rest, each of you in the house of her husband. Then she kissed them, and they lifted up their voice and wept. And they said unto her, Surely we will return with thee unto thy people. And Naomi said, Turn again, my daughters, why will you go with me? Are there yet any more sons in my womb, that they may be your husbands? Turn again, my daughters, go your way, for I am too old to have an husband. If I should say, I have hope, and if I should have a husband also tonight, and should also bear sons, would ye tarry for them till they were grown? Would ye stay for them from having husbands? Nay, my daughters, for it grieveth me much for your sakes that the hand of the Lord is gone out against me. And they lifted up their voice and wept again. And Orpah kissed her mother-in-law, but Ruth clave unto her. And she said, Behold, thy sister-in-law is gone back unto her people and unto her gods. Return thou after thy sister-in-law. And Ruth said, Entreat me not to leave thee, or return from following after thee. For whither thou goest, I will go, and where thou lodgest, I will lodge. Thy people shall be my people, and thy God my God. Where thou diest, I will die, and there I will be buried. The Lord do so to me, and more also, if aught but death part thee and me. When she saw that she was steadfastly minded to go with her, then she left, speaking unto her. So they two went until they came to Bethlehem. And it came to pass, when they were come to Bethlehem, that all the city was moved about them. And they said, Is this Naomi? And she said unto them, Call me not Naomi, call me Mara, for the Almighty hath dealt very bitterly with me. I went out full, and the Lord hath brought me home again empty. Why then call ye me Naomi, seeing the Lord hath testified against me, and the Almighty hath afflicted me? So Naomi returned, and Ruth the Moabitess, her daughter-in-law, with her, which returned out of the country of Moab, and they came to Bethlehem in the beginning of the barley harvest. Now, a very familiar passage, I'm sure, to many of us, because it's lovely to read the book of Ruth, and so I'm sure we've probably read it on a good few occasions, but we'll come back to this later and we'll go through it. But before we do that, I would like to give a little bit of background about it as well. Now, the book of Ruth. Since we're starting today, we're kicking off the book of Ruth, as it were. I'd like to look at a bit of a background to it before we actually come to the book itself. Starting this series, there's a couple of passages I'd like to look at in Genesis that provide some background to what we've read in Ruth Chapter One. One is very highly relevant, and one's perhaps more an in-passing kind of reference. The title for the talk today, the message today, is Lot, Loss, Love and Loyalty. That's Lot, Loss, Love and Loyalty. So let's go to the first of those two Genesis passages. And if you've not looked at it before, I think you're going to find it quite shocking. If you are familiar with it, you'll know that it's a description of something very unwholesome indeed. Genesis chapter 19, and I'm just going to read the passage between verses 30 and 38. So it's Genesis chapter 19 and verses 30 all the way through to 38. And Lot went up out of Zoar and dwelt in the mountain, and his two daughters with him. For he feared to dwell in Zoar, and he dwelt in a cave, he and his two daughters. And the firstborn said unto the younger, Our father is old, and there is not a man in the earth to come in unto us after the manner of all the earth. Come, let us make our father drink wine, and we will lie with him, that we may preserve the seed of our father. And they made their father drink wine that night. And the firstborn went in, and lay with her father, and he perceived not when she lay down, nor when she arose. And it came to pass on the morrow, that the firstborn said unto the younger, Behold, I lay yesternight with my father, let us make him drink wine this night also, and go thou in, and lie with him, that we may preserve the seed of our father. And they made their father drink wine that night also, and the younger arose and lay with him, and he perceived not when she lay down, nor when she arose. Thus were both daughters of Lot with child by their father. And the firstborn bare a son, and called his name Moab. The same is the father of the Moabites unto this day. And the younger, she also bare a son, and called his name Ben-Ami. The same is the father of the children of Ammon unto this day. So, unwholesome though it is, I'm sure you'll understand why I wanted to read that, because that is where we find Moab, the father of the Moabites. And Ruth, of course, was a Moabite-ess. It's pretty grim, isn't it? And as a little background on this background of this passage, it comes hot on the heel of Lot and his daughters being rescued from Sodom. I'm sure you remember the passage where these angels came along and they stayed with Lot. And you remember the men of the city wanted to know the angels. And in another very grim happening, Lot was prepared to put his daughters out there, wasn't he? To say, look, these daughters, they've never known men, have them. I mean, this is all pretty horrendous stuff. So Lot is in this awful situation right after he's been rescued from the horror of Sodom and Gomorrah, and now in this very grim situation. Now, you might remember that before this, Noah had also ended up in a weird situation. He was rescued. He built the ark, didn't he, under God's instructions. And right after he'd been rescued and the ark had come to rest and they were carrying on, he was seen naked by one of his sons. So another kind of weird happening. And just as a side note, I think this is one of the many pointers to the veracity of the Bible. If you were coming up with a book of stories to try and brainwash people into believing things, I don't think you would include these very odd, vulgar and seemingly peripheral events. If one were writing a book to brainwash people, you wouldn't waste space on things like that. So there's been sin after Noah's rescue, and there's been sin after Lot's rescue. Jesus mentioned the days of Noah and the days of Lot when he talked about the end times. And I do wonder whether there is some kind of parallel with what's going on in the world today. Because not so long ago in world history, we were spectacularly rescued from God's judgment ourselves, weren't we? Not by a physical ark, not by angels yanking us to get us out of the way of fire and brimstone, but by the death of our Lord Jesus Christ. And I wonder if there's anything in particular that is our Noah or our Lot moment. Perhaps something to talk about for another time there. Anyway, we've covered the fact that Moab is both the son and grandson of Lot at the same time. Bit weird. Born out of an incestuous union between Lot and one of his daughters. So keep that in mind as we come towards the book of Ruth. But I want to drop in on one other passage on our way to Ruth as well. It's still in Genesis, and now it's Genesis 38, 6 to 11. And Judah took a wife for his firstborn, whose name was Tamar. And Judah's firstborn, was wicked in the sight of the Lord, and the Lord slew him. And Judah said unto Onan, Go in to thy brother's wife and marry her, and raise up seed to thy brother. And Onan knew that the seed should not be his. And it came to pass, when he went in unto his brother's wife, that he spilled it on the ground, lest that he should give seed to his brother. And the thing which he did displeased the Lord, wherefore he slew him also. Then said Judah to Tamar, his daughter-in-law, Remain a widow in thy father's house, till Shelah my son be grown. For, he said, lest peradventure he die also, as his brethren did. And Tamar went and dwelled in her father's house. Now, you know that there's a lot more to that story, but we'll leave it there. I just wanted to highlight that one verse, 11. Then said Judah to Tamar, his daughter-in-law, Remain a widow at thy father's house till Shelah my son be grown. For he said, lest peradventure he die also, as his brethren did. And Tamar went and dwelt in her father's house. So in other words, Tamar was told to wait. And I'd just like to highlight that as we get to Ruth. Now, we can come to the actual story of Ruth, but I just wanted to give that as some background information. So turning to Ruth, we'll go through some of the happenings in that first chapter. Or we read that there's a famine in the land during the time of the Judges. It's contemporary with the first half of the book of Judges. As you know, it comes straight after the book of Judges. And this book of Ruth is a contrast, because in the book of Judges there's a lot of unhelpful happenings, lots of blood and things like that, and then we've got this amazing story of love. And this famine that we read about could well have been a judgment from God, because the Israelites had not been following God's instructions once they'd occupied the land of Canaan. So we read that a certain man decided to move his family out of Bethlehem. course, Bethlehem, as you perhaps know, translates to house of bread, Bethlehem. So it's a bit ironic, isn't it, that this certain man was moving his family out of the house of bread because he didn't think there was enough bread, to Moab. And why would you go to Moab? Now, of course, in this day and age, if you were thinking to go somewhere, you'd Google it, wouldn't you? You'd get on there, tap it in, find out, what TripAdvisor said and what the reports were. And I wonder if you did that about Moab, what would come up? Sexual immorality, false god worship, lots of bad things in the previous 400 years, and you might think better of it. But this was not something that Moab had the ability to do. But we do have to ask, did he consult with the Lord? Did Moab ask the Lord, where should I go? Because I don't think he did. If he had consulted with the Lord, he'd probably have been told to stay where he was, in the house of bread. So was this move God's will? I'm not sure that it was. And these are not just questions for him, they're questions for us, aren't they? When things get tough for us and we decide action needs to be taken, do we consult God? Do we ask the Lord for direction in the first place? Or do we come to the Lord last when all of our plans have gone awry and things aren't quite right? There was a pastor in the US, Pastor Clarence Sexton from Temple Baptist Church, and I forget which passage he was talking about. It may have been Jonah, but he was saying that God was there at every turn of Jonah's life, but it had to be until it got to the bottom of the ocean, or he was throwing that Jonah actually, prayed, and we should really take note, and we should come to the Lord first, shouldn't we, in our times of trouble and our times of decision making. So when problems arise, do we look to the Lord, or do we try and sort things out ourselves? What comes to mind is the words of Proverbs 3, 5, 6 and 7. Trust in the Lord with all your heart and lean not on your own understanding. In all your ways acknowledge him, and he shall direct your paths. Okay, so in verse 2, we have the names of these family members. Elimelech, God is my king, is the meaning of Elimelech. And again, it's a bit ironic that his name is God is my king, and yet he seems to have gone against God's will. Naomi means pleasant, and that's exactly why when she comes back to Bethlehem and they say, here's Naomi, she says, don't call me Naomi, call me Mara, call me bitterness. Mahlon is sick, and Kilian is pining. And Moab means the progeny of a father. Now in verse 3, we see that Elimelech dies. And verse 4, the boys take these Moabite wives, Orpah, meaning kind, and Ruth, meaning friendship. And then the boys die as well. Now, at this stage, we have to ask whether the move to Moab was really within God's will. As I said, my suspicion is it's not, because they weren't really blessed, were they? Elimelech died, and then those two boys died as well. And so in verse 6, Naomi decides to return to Bethlehem because she's heard the Lord is now blessing that land with bread. So the reason for the move was a famine in the land, but the reason for the move back is that the Lord is now blessing that place. So now we get to some meat, if you like, if you'll pardon the use of a different metaphor. We've already had the house of bread. Naomi sets out to leave, telling her two daughters-in-law to return to their mother's houses and find new husbands. But they both said they wanted to go back with her to Bethlehem. And Naomi encourages them to reconsider, pointing out the futility of the situation. She's not really in a position to have new children for them to marry. And that's where I wanted to draw that parallel. We heard that Tamar was told to wait, weren't we? And then we read in this passage, and in verses 12 and 13, turn again, my daughters, go your way, for I'm too old to have a husband. If I should say I should have hope, if I should have a husband and should also bear sons, would ye tarry for when they were grown? Well, that's the opposite, isn't it, of what Tamar was told. by Judah. And I just thought that was an interesting contrast, because all of this is in the lineage of the Lord Jesus Christ that we're reading, isn't it? Quite amazing how that all works out. Now, on this advice or encouragement from Naomi, Orpah leaves and Ruth stays. And then in verse 15, Naomi gives Ruth some very bad advice. Verse 15, and she said, behold, thy sister-in-law is gone back unto her people and unto her gods. Return thou after thy sister-in-law. So she's pointing Ruth back to the Moabite gods. And as we already discussed, these are very unwholesome things. So it's not good advice that she was given at all. But hot on the heels of that, we have these two beautiful verses, such lovely verses. And I don't know whether you've ever known difficulties in relationships in your time, whether there's been a breach of trust or a lack of loyalty. But when we read these two verses, aren't they a wonderful declaration? And Ruth said to Naomi, entreat me not to leave thee, or to return from following after thee. For whither thou goest, I will go, and where thou lodgest, I will lodge. Thy people shall be my people, and thy God, my God. Where thou diest, I will die, and there will I be buried. The Lord do so to me, and more also, if aught but death part me and thee. Aren't those lovely verses to read? I heard of one wedding where that verse 16 was engraved inside the rings that were used for the wedding. Such a lovely picture of love and loyalty. And also, of course, verse 16 is where Ruth converts, if you like, ahead of the Lord Jesus Christ here, but she converts from the Moabite gods to Naomi's God, which is the one true God, the God of Israel. So that's a lovely thing. Thy God will be my God. I wonder what Ruth had seen in all of this mayhem of people dying, of Elimelech dying, of the husbands dying. I wonder what she'd seen that she decided that thy God, Naomi, will be my God. So, in the face of this declaration, this lovely declaration from Ruth, Naomi concedes that Ruth should accompany her. And they journey up to Bethlehem. And in verse 19, we read that part. So they two went until they came to Bethlehem. And it came to pass that when they were come to Bethlehem, all the city was moved about them. And they said, is this Naomi? And she said unto them, call me not Naomi, call me Mara, for the Almighty hath dealt very bitterly with me. So Naomi explains the sadness and the difficulty that has been brought about by all of the happenings. She went away full. I don't think the Lord sent her away, but she went away full with Elimelech, and now she returns empty. She says, call me Mara, which is bitterness. Verse 22. So Naomi returned, and Ruth the Moabitess, her daughter-in-law, with her, which returned out of the country of Moab. And they came to Bethlehem. They came back to the house of bread in the beginning of the barley harvest. And as you look at the rest of the book of Ruth over the coming weeks, I'd encourage you to look out for that term barley harvest. I'm not sure how important it is, but it does figure a lot. It crops up, if you pardon the expression, it crops up in more places than one in the book of Ruth. So, really, I think the main question for us is that one that faced Elimelech, and he made the wrong choice. He decided he needed to move. He decided he needed to take some action. And I think we can deduce from what we've read that he didn't consult God, that he did his own thing. And things really didn't work out very well for him. And so as we start this book of Ruth, and I pray that the rest of the chapters will be a blessing to you as you look at them, let us consider that when we're confronted with situations where decisions need to be made, we can't escape that we make it our business to consult God first on these things and to look for his leadership and his guidance. May the Lord bless these thoughts to us in Jesus' name. I have decided to follow Jesus. I have decided to follow Jesus. I have decided to follow Jesus. No turning back, no turning back. No one behind me, the cross before me. The world behind me, the cross before me. The world behind me, the cross before me. No turning back, no turning back. Though none go with me, I still will follow. Though none go with me, I still will follow. Though none go with me, I still will follow. No turning back, no turning back. Will you decide now to follow Jesus? Will you decide now to follow Jesus? Will you decide now to follow Jesus? No turning back.